No formula, just mommy's healthy, natural breast milk.
Yummy.
Her whole face just got swollen like this overnight.
No fever. Gland's normal. Missing her vaccination dates.
We're not vaccinating. Gribbit, gribbit, gribbit.
Think they don't work?
I think some multinational pharmaceutical company wants me to think they work. Pad their bottom line.
May I?
Sure.
Gribbit. 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 Yeah, all natural, no dyes is a good business. All natural children's toys. Toy companies, they don't arbitrarily mark up their frogs. They don't lie about how much they spend on research and development. The worst that a toy company could be accused of is making a really boring frog. Gribbit, gribbit, gribbit. You know another really good business? Teeny tiny baby coffins. You can get them in frog green, fire engine red. Really. The antibodies in Yummy Mummy only protect the kid for 6 months, which is why these companies think they can gouge you. They think that you'll spend whatever they ask to keep your kid alive. Want to change things? Prove them wrong. A few hundred parents like you decide they'd rather let their kid die than cough up $40 for a vaccination. Believe me, prices will drop really fast. Gribbit, 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 gribbit.
Tell me what she has.
A cold.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated, even though the vaccine is safe, effective, and free. You might be confused about what is true and what is false about COVID-19. While the vaccines provide strong protection for the vaccinated, we read about and hear about and we see the stories of hospitalized people on their deathbeds, among the unvaccinated over the past few weeks. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Here's the math. The vast majority of Americans are doing the right thing. Nearly 3/4 of the eligible have gotten at least one shot, but 1/4 has not gotten any. That's nearly 80 million Americans not vaccinated. And a country as large as ours, that's 25% minority. That 25% can cause a lot of damage, and they are. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer. And fourth, I want to emphasize that the vaccines provide very strong protection from severe illness from COVID-19. I know there's a lot of confusion and misinformation, but the world's leading scientists confirm that if you're fully vaccinated, your risk of severe illness from COVID-19 is very low.
But with a new vaccine comes a lot of questions and, unfortunately, misinformation. So Lauren Verno and our News4Jax Trust Index team is hard at work to help separate fact and fiction. So, Lauren, what did you find out?
Tarek, Joy, so what we know right now, this is the post that is circulating around social media. It's a tweet that says, these are 3 of the 4 volunteers who developed Bell's palsy after being vaccinated with the Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. So that's where we started with our Trust Index.
This is something that's popular going around social media now, particularly amongst the anti-vaccination crowd.
UF Health Jacksonville Director of Infectious Disease Chad Nielsen says misleading posts like this one are very common and reminds everyone not everything you read on social media is true.
There's no evidence of that for this vaccine yet. Certainly when Pfizer released their clinical trial information, the adverse events were reported. There was nothing serious. I'll go on and say there were deaths in the clinical trial, none of which were due to the vaccine.
To be clear, 4 participants in the Pfizer vaccine trial and 4 participants in Moderna's trial did experience Bell's palsy, which in its simplest form causes the face to droop. In Pfizer's trial, all 4 participants who experienced Bell's palsy received the COVID vaccine. However, in Moderna's trial, 3 participants who experienced Bell's palsy got the vaccine, 1 got the placebo. Dr. Elizabeth Ransom with Baptist Health says that should not deter anyone from getting the vaccine.
Just like there were some cases of appendicitis in study participants, both in the placebo arm and in the vaccine arm. Well, appendicitis happens in the population as well, so these things will occur naturally.
The FDA recognized these cases of Bell's palsy before approving Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, but says there is no evidence to link the two. It's important to note that the reaction didn't happen immediately after the vaccine was administered, but in all cases weeks later. The FDA is now recommending surveillance of cases of Bell's palsy as more people get vaccinated. Now, since there is no scientific directly linking the two, we are going to mark this claim as not true on the Trust Index.
I wanted to talk about it responsibly. I don't want to discourage people from getting vaccines. And strangely, I don't really want to discourage them from getting this one.
Jennifer Gibson says she got the COVID vaccine because she wanted to see life in Canada get back to normal. But the Toronto woman wasn't prepared for what she saw when she looked in the mirror 2 weeks after getting her AstraZeneca shot.
In the morning, I was just looking and I thought, gosh, something is weird with my face. And I thought, whatever, I slept funny, no big deal. And by the end of the day, my husband even, I was asking him, like, this is weird now. And even with kindness, he had to say, yes, it was.
A phone consult with Gibson's doctor confirmed that she had developed Bell's palsy, a form of facial paralysis.
So honestly, when they said Bell's palsy, it's, devastating to look at half your face being paralyzed. But the little that I knew of Bell's palsy, I thought people don't die from that. So the fact that it wasn't something that I was going to not be around for my daughter later, it's dealable. It sucks, but it's dealable.
Gibson is sharing her experience on Instagram to show people what vaccine side effects could potentially be like.
Health officials say we're also seeing a rise in the number of vaccinated people testing positive for COVID. This is expected. Remember, the vaccine is not a 100% cure, but it keeps you from getting hospitalized or dying from the virus. The most high-profile cases recently involved several members of the Texas Democratic Caucus in D.C. We learned over the weekend that at least 5 of the lawmakers, all vaccinated, tested positive for the virus. The good news, none are having severe symptoms thanks to the vaccine.
The new CDC internal report not only acknowledges that so-called breakthrough infections are rising, but that they may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases.
Were you surprised that you had been vaccinated and got sick anyway?
Yes, absolutely.
Catherine Griegel in Florida is still in isolation after testing positive about a week ago. She was vaccinated back in March.
You can still contract the virus and you can still get sick, but you're not going to get as sick as you would if you hadn't. So I feel like I'm very fortunate.
The CDC stopped providing public information on total breakthrough infections in late April when the tally hit 10,000. Instead, it only posted data when they led to hospitalization or death. So NBC News reached out to all 50 states. 38 responded. We found more than 125,000 fully vaccinated Americans have tested positive for COVID. According to a CDC internal document, there are now roughly 35,000 breakthrough infections per week. Keep in mind, that's a tiny percentage of the more than 160 million fully vaccinated Americans.
If you are vaccinated, you have 25 times less chance of getting hospitalized or dying.
In Provincetown, Massachusetts, a COVID cluster of 882 cases is linked to the Delta variant. The CDC analyzed nearly 500 of those infections. About 3/4 of them were in people who had been fully vaccinated. Just 4 were hospitalized. In Los Angeles County, during the first 2 weeks of July, fully vaccinated people made up roughly 26% of all new infections. Martha McAdam, a kidney transplant recipient, was vaccinated in February but came down with COVID in March. She was hospitalized for 48 days.
If I hadn't had that vaccine, I wouldn't be alive today. Every day we hear about more and more people who have been fully vaccinated coming down with the infections. There have been some concerns that the CDC has not been more transparent on this issue. Is there anything you want to say to clear the air on these breakthrough cases?
I want to articulate that we expected to see some breakthrough cases. No vaccine is 100%, and I think we should be really lucky to understand that this vaccine is working against severe disease, against hospitalizations, against deaths.
Dr. Walensky, how do we turn around this wave? What's the best case in getting better?
The most important thing, I think, to realize is if we unify as a country, we can turn this around in several weeks.
Doctor, when we talk about vaccination rates, we talk about the number of people who are at least partially vaccinated. Let's talk about that partial. If you only have one dose of Moderna or Pfizer, how are you going to stand up against this particular variant?
I think we need to shift our dialogue and talk about people who are fully vaccinated. Data have definitely shown that one dose of the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine is not enough to conquer the Delta variant in the way that we need it to work. And so right now I'm shifting my dialogue to talk about people who are fully vaccinated. If you've only gotten one dose, even if it was more than 3 or 4 weeks ago, go back for your second. So yes, get both doses.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this. What more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see?
The Orange County Coroner's Office is investigating the death of a woman who passed away several days after getting her second Moderna vaccine. The family says the mother and grandmother was healthy before she got her shot and that her sudden death came as a shock. Eyewitness News reporter Jessica DeNova has more.
This Orange County son worries his mom died because of her second Moderna COVID-19 vaccine dose. A conversation with staff at the OC Coroner's Office about Griselda Flores' death raised red flags for Richard Cardenas and his family.
They made it seem like this was not the first call that they had.
OC Assistant Chief Deputy Coroner Brad Olson says that's right. Olson tells Eyewitness News a handful of deaths, including Griselda's, are under investigation because they happened 1 to 3 days after the person got a COVID-19 vaccine dose.
And that means our doctors want to run some additional studies, whether it be toxicology, micros, or just a review of medical records to see their treatment course and look for those other underlying conditions. But we haven't come to the conclusion yet that the vaccine had anything directly to do with the causes of death.
Cardenas says his mom was a healthy, outgoing, hardworking mother and grandmother.
Happy, smiling, always, telling me she loves me.
The day after her second shot on April 14th at a CVS in Orange, Griselda complained of the expected side effects, chills, body aches, and a fever.
She looked really pale though, really pale. And she just said she was tired and she was gonna go home and sleep.
2 days after her second dose, Griselda's family says they found her dead in her room.
I'm very, very worried about public safety because now it's just like, if my mom passed away, how many other people are gonna pass away?
CDC data shows in the U.S. there were less than 2 deaths per 100,000 COVID-19 vaccines administered, and death investigations didn't find vaccinations contributed to patient deaths. A person has a higher likelihood of dying if they contract the COVID-19 virus, according to California Department of Public Health numbers. 1,660 deaths per 100,000 cases. Olson says the deaths pending investigation date back to January, and the decedents, both male and female, received either the Moderna or Pfizer shot. The results of further studies may come 3 months after death, maybe longer.
Fully vaccinated people do have the potential to be able to transmit COVID-19 to others. This appears to be reduced with vaccination, but it's not reduced enough to allow for unmasking in all situations. Because of this potential, that's why people in areas of high transmission are still asked to mask. This is also why people who are in areas where there are especially vulnerable patients, or people like in hospital settings where we take care of patients who may have weaker immune systems, are still recommended to wear masks to protect those who are at the highest risk of transmission, even from vaccinated people. We know that some people who are vaccinated do have the ability to have high levels of virus in their nose and in their throat, even if they don't have symptoms. This isn't a surprise. Many different types of vaccines prevent illness, but don't necessarily prevent you from being able to transmit that illness to others. But don't necessarily prevent you from being able to transmit that illness to others. But don't necessarily prevent you from being able to transmit that illness to others.
You're outdoors. You need, and not in a big crowd, you no longer need to wear a mask. I want to be absolutely clear. If you're in a crowd, like a stadium or at a conference or a concert, you still need to wear a mask, even if you're outside. But beginning today, gathering with a group of friends in a park, going for a picnic, as long as you are vaccinated and outdoors, you can do it without a mask. The CDC is able to make this announcement because our scientists are convinced by the data that the odds of getting or giving the virus to others is very, very low. The bottom line is clear. If you're vaccinated, you can do more things more safely, both outdoors as well as indoors.
This whole pandemic, everything is so new. Everything is like constantly changing, constantly like evolving.
A teacher and a hospitality worker in San Jose tonight, fully vaccinated and not quite sure what to think about information that comes out of the Center for Disease Control.
They're always changing, right? So the only thing that I can say is just be informed, stay informed, and do the best that you can.
Their reaction comes after hearing this statement from CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
The director is referring to a new CDC study of 4,000 frontline workers. Some of them were vaccinated and some were not. They tested themselves weekly for COVID infections between December and March. Among fully vaccinated people in the study, there were only 3 COVID-19 infections detected. Unvaccinated participants logged 161 COVID cases. Scientific evidence, experts say, proves fully vaccinated people are protected in 2 ways.
Essentially, vaccines block you from getting and giving the virus. Essentially, vaccines block you from getting and giving the virus. Essentially, vaccines block you from getting and giving the virus.
Many different types of vaccines prevent illness, but don't necessarily prevent you from being able to transmit that illness to others.
UCSF infectious disease specialist Dr. Monica Gandhi says this new information is significant.
You can feel safe as a vaccinated person going indoor dining, going to a gym, going to the movies.
You can feel safe, she says, without being reckless.
Now, out in public, since we don't know who's vaccinated, who's not, we're going to still maintain masks and distancing until everyone who wants to get a vaccine can get it.
Cheryl Hurd, NBC Bay Area News.
There is a clear message that is coming through. This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We are seeing outbreaks of cases in parts of the country that have low vaccination coverage because unvaccinated people are at risk, and communities that are fully vaccinated are generally faring well. The good news is that if you're fully vaccinated, you are protected against severe COVID, hospitalization, and death, and are even protected against the known variants, including the Delta variant circulating in this country. If you are not vaccinated, you remain at risk. And our biggest concern is that we are going to continue to see preventable cases, hospitalizations, and sadly deaths among the unvaccinated.
The FDA could approve emergency authorization for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine as soon as today, but no vaccine will be effective if the people don't take it. In our series, Vaccinating America, we're looking at coronavirus vaccine hesitancy is what it's called. 60% of Americans say they would definitely or probably get a vaccine, but another survey shows only 14% of Black Americans and 34% of Latinos trust that it will be safe.
show of hands, how many of you have gotten a COVID vaccine?
These are 4 healthcare workers from different hospitals in North Carolina.
Why not?
We don't know what the long-term side effects are.
It also hasn't been proven to be effective.
The CDC and many public health experts say that it's more than 90% effective.
They do say that. That hasn't proven to me to be true.
I'm not going to just jump on a bandwagon with something that has not been tested.
When you say that it hasn't been tested, it has been tested though.
But not to the, if you look at the normal year span of how long something is tested, it's usually 12 to 14 years before it comes to humans.
Across the country, about 1 in 4 healthcare workers still isn't vaccinated against COVID. And from North Carolina to Texas to New York, anti-mandate protests are mounting.
I don't trust it right now.
So is the pushback.
This is in the category of give me a bleeping break. When did everyone get a medical degree?
For weeks, we've spoken with many overworked healthcare workers who practically begged Americans to get the shot.
What do you tell people who just don't believe you?
It's frustrating.
Not these. They say they're not anti-vax, more anti-mandate.
And I'm not comfortable putting something into my body until I am ready. If and when I'm ready to get the vaccine, I will get it on my own accord. I won't be forced.
You just don't trust the CDC.
I do not trust the CDC. Absolutely not.
And that fuels their skepticism.
I have the right to question anybody in this country I want to question.
You're entitled to your own opinion, but these are facts.
Are they, though? Are they facts?
Lester, more than 40,000 people participated in the Pfizer clinical trial alone, but those workers are among the many who are not convinced.
Hundreds of San Diego police officers say they would rather quit their jobs than be forced to take the COVID vaccine. Good evening. I'm Kimberly Hunt.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Our ABC 10 News reporter Mimi Alcala spoke with the police union president, who is seriously concerned about losing officers to the city's vaccine mandate. Mimi.
Stephen Kim, he says after years of working on recruitment and retention, this vaccine mandate could set a major setback for the San Diego Police Department.
It's concerning for sure.
The city of San Diego recently notified employees that they must get a COVID-19 vaccine by November 2nd with some religious and medical exemptions. Jack Schaefer is the president of the San Diego Police Officers Association. He says a new survey highlights the potential issues with staffing the police department if the city sticks with that mandate. He says about 733 union members responded to the survey,
which is roughly 38% of our whole force. It just seems like there should be something other than either have your vaccination or go get another job.
In a copy of the results shared with ABC 10 News, about 91% of the respondents believe that vaccines should be an individual choice. Schaefer says when asked if an officer would rather be fired than obey a city or department mandate, hundreds said yes.
I believe it was somewhere in the 330 range that said that they'd rather be fired than be mandated.
And he says when officers were asked if they'd consider leaving the department if vaccines were mandated by the city, about 479 said yes.
I was asked recently if, those numbers might be a little skewed. Obviously, any survey can be, but even if it's a quarter of that number, you're talking 75 or 80 officers, that's a lot. And they could very easily go to other places.
Schaefer tells me the union has been negotiating with the city and shared those survey results. He worries after years of working on recruitment and retention and finally getting to a good place, this mandate could reverse those efforts. He hopes a testing option will be given to those who don't want the vaccine. In a statement to ABC 10 News, Mayor Todd Gloria's press secretary said, "Polls don't dictate our policies. We want to protect our public safety officers and the public."
Jean Marie Naser is a nurse in Boca Raton who says she is not getting a vaccine for COVID.
I've looked at the science, I've studied what they have put forth in their studies and their warnings, their precautions, and the side effects, and I am not comfortable to say that this is something that would be safe for myself.
She says she found the information provided by Pfizer and available on the FDA's website.
Not only that it's being rushed, they flat out admit that they didn't do the full study. They haven't provided that information, and that they say they'll follow up for 24 months.
It's something that is alarming alarming to doctors like Larry Bush, who is investigating one vaccine trial in Palm Beach County.
We're constantly looking for any side effects, and we're obligated to report them to the FDA.
Dr. Bush says the vaccines at this point have gone through 3 phases of trials, and he is not hesitating to recommend vaccinations.
I just had 5 people in the office today ask, should I get a COVID vaccine when it's available to me? And my answer is, as soon as you can, I would get mine as soon as I can.
All right, now that the FDA has given full approval to Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, policymakers anticipate government agencies, universities, and private companies will start ramping up vaccine mandates. But even before Pfizer's FDA approval, vaccine mandates were already rolling out across the country, sparking this question. Who then is liable for injuries that might arise from COVID-19 shots? Trinity Chavez has that story.
Just go ahead and hold that there just to make sure it doesn't fall down.
Back in December 2020, the U.S. began vaccinating Americans as the pandemic crippled the country and much of the world. And while federal health officials have reiterated that mass vaccinations are the way out of the pandemic, recent data shows more than 45% of unvaccinated people don't want it, driven largely by widespread mistrust, especially if something goes wrong with the vaccine and no one is held responsible. That's because the federal government has granted companies like Pfizer and Moderna immunity from liability if something unintentionally goes wrong with their vaccines under the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act. It protects companies making or distributing critical medical supplies, such as vaccines and treatments, unless there's willful misconduct by the company. The protection lasts until 2024. That means for the next 4 years, these companies cannot be sued for money damages in court over injuries related to the administration or use of products to treat or protect against COVID-19. Rogue Dunn, a Dallas labor and employment attorney, said in an interview, it is very rare for a blanket immunity law to be passed. Pharmaceutical companies typically aren't offered much liability protection under the law. And while you also can't sue the Food and Drug Administration for authorizing a vaccine for emergency use, there are government programs that deal with these kinds of lawsuits. First, the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, or NVICP, and second, the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, or CICP, which was established by the PrEP Act. The first one was set up in the 80s, which deals with people who want to sue because of adverse side effects from the shots, like the flu or HPV shots. Federal courts are involved in those type of lawsuits, while the second covers COVID-19 vaccines and other special shots related to a health emergency.
We are a federal government program available to help the public in the event that they incur out-of-pocket medical expenses or lost wages as the result of an injury from a covered countermeasure.
But experts say there are 3 major problems with using CICP as your main tool. It's very hard to show proof that the vaccine or another measure caused harm with compelling scientific and medical evidence, which isn't always available early on. There is also a strict 1-year statute, which means all claims have to be filed within 12 months of receiving the vaccine, and if you have compensation from any other source, including health insurance, the program won't compensate you.
Have your vaccinations ready. I appreciate that.
This is where mandates intersect with the private sector and compensation. While you can't hold your employer accountable if they require that you get the COVID-19 vaccine, but if you got the COVID-19 vaccine and you were injured, you can apply for workers' compensation and get compensation through an easier system than CICP.
My name is Dr. Christina Parks. I received my PhD in cellular and molecular biology right here in the state of Michigan from the University of Michigan Medical School. And so I'm very well versed in the science of both these mRNA gene therapy vaccines, this kind of technology, as well as what a vaccine is designed to do in the body, what it can do, what it can't do, and the fact that this is extremely complex science that has been oversimplified in the media to basically take away our freedom of choice. What I want to address today in this limited time is the fact that vaccine requirements and mandates are based on the faulty assumption that the vaccines in question prevent transmission of the pathogen, right? Does the vaccine for DTaP prevent transmission? No. Does the vaccine for flu prevent transmission? No. Do the vaccines for COVID prevent transmission? No. In fact, they were never designed to do that. All right, so you're asking, what about this 95% effectiveness? If you look at those clinical trials, they do not say that they prevent transmission. They expressly say that they're measuring whether they attenuate symptoms. So they're 95% effective based on their clinical trials at attenuating symptoms for the first variant, which is essentially gone in our population. Right now, the predominant variant is the Delta, and CDC Director Walensky basically said that these vaccines have no ability to prevent infection by and transmission of the Delta variant.
Now, tonight, let's start with your freedom is under assault. Dr. Joe Biden, not sure what medical school he went to, won't take no for an answer. Now, it's your body, it's his choice, with an unconstitutional, illegal, unethical federal vaccine mandate that, by the way, he said he would never support. One that Jen Psaki told us that it is not the role of the federal government to do. One that Nancy Pelosi said they don't have the authority to do it. And Kamala Harris was the one that said it's your body, you get to make the choice. And to make matters worse, this has nothing to do with your health or safety. Instead, this is it is a calculated, it is a political ploy. Biden's presidency has been a complete disaster in every single way. His poll numbers are in the basement. He's desperate to galvanize support around a shared common enemy. That enemy is some Americans that don't buy into his one-size-fits-all unscientific medicine. Think about this. One size fits all. No medical exemptions. Let's start there. How is that following science? It's not, especially those who refuse to follow his vaccine rules and mandates, including Republican governors, by the way, who won't act like mini dictators, who actually believe strongly in a principle that Joe gives lip service to, and it's called liberty and freedom and choice. Joe says it's not about freedom. It's not about choice. It is about freedom. It is about your choice. It is about your unique medical history and your current medical condition and what your doctor thinks, not a phony doctor or TV guys that think they're a doctor or play doctor on TV. Americans that value their medical privacy, Americans that value doctor-patient confidentiality, and anyone else who believes in personal freedom, Joe Biden's heartfelt unity pledge, that lasted all but 7 months. Now it's us versus them, and Dr. Joe's patience is wearing thin. He wants to lecture you and scold you for not listening. Now half the country is, enemy number one, because they don't want to follow Dr. Joe. In fact, Democrats say nicer things about illegal immigrants and even the Taliban, some of them, than the 80 million unvaccinated Americans. I guess it's open season on them. Joe's following the science, really? And you want to lecture Americans and scold Americans and tell them how bad they are and how they should be hated and give license to attacks on people that have different views or medical conditions you might not even know about. But you better get the vaccine or Dr. Joe Biden is going to unleash the full force of the federal government against you and your loved ones and your employer. And you will be canceled in society altogether. You'll be shut out of everything. Illegal aliens, by the way, I see that Mayorkas won't use that term anymore starting today, apparently, or yesterday. They get no mandates and free trips to the state, right? They get free trips, no mandates, get to go to the state of their choice. And they get free health care and free education. You pay for that, all while totally exempt from this mandate. Take a look.
United States.
But it's a requirement for people at a business with more than 100 people. It is not a requirement for migrants at the southern border. Why?
That's correct. Go ahead.
The rules don't apply to illegal immigrants or members of Congress or their staffers. It wasn't even going to apply to postal workers until public pressure forced the administration to reverse course late today. But it does apply to millions of law-abiding Americans. It doesn't matter if you have a rare pre-existing condition and your doctor thinks taking the vaccine is very risky and not the right choice for you. It doesn't matter if you had COVID and you have T-cell immunity from a prior infection. Cleveland Clinic says the science is pretty clear on that so far. It doesn't matter if you prefer to keep your medical decisions private. The frail, the weak, the mentally incompetent, impaired president, Dr. Joe knows best. And, of course, the mandate is deeply unconstitutional on top of all of this. At least 10 governors are now planning legal action, including Governor Noem, Governor Abbott, Governor DeSantis, and Shadow President Chief of Staff Ron Klain, he's now apparently congratulating himself, calling the new mandate the ultimate workaround for a federal vaccine requirement. But anyone with a functioning brain knows that the mandate is in serious legal jeopardy. Even fake news CNN attorneys recognize this. And that's why a few months ago, several top Democrats promised there would be no federal vaccine mandate because it's not the role of the federal government. Take a look how things change.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory.
Perhaps the federal government should step in and issue mandates, and if not, are you putting the needs of unvaccinated people ahead of the needs of vaccinated people?
Well, I think the question here, one, that's not the role of the federal government. That is the role that institutions, private sector entities, and others may take.
We cannot require someone to be vaccinated. That's just not what we can do.
I am all for more vaccination, but I have nothing further to say on that except that we're looking into those policies. And quite honestly, as people are doing that locally, those are individual local decisions as well.
I don't think you'll ever see a mandating of vaccine, particularly for the general public.
Oh, okay. Another big change of the goalposts move like every day. Why would anyone have any faith? Want to know where vaccine hesitancy comes from? The people that change their mind every 5 seconds and the people that were wrong in every prediction they ever made. They keep changing everything every single day. No mask, one mask, two masks, vax or mask. Now it's vax and mask. Now it's vax, mask, and add a booster to it. And Dr. Joe just can't understand why anyone would be vaccine hesitant. Why on earth would anyone not trust the experts? You know, the ones that were wrong about the origins of COVID. And some actually really lied. We now know the transmissibility of COVID, the use of ventilators, the vaccine timeline, the threshold for herd immunity, the ones who promised 2 weeks to slow the spread, the ones who told us not to wear masks, then one mask, then two masks, then masks outdoors, then no masks outdoors, vaxxed and masked, vax masked, and now boosted, and on and on. Can you keep up? Even Joe and Kamala, they expressed hesitancy over the vaccine. Maybe they forgot.
Let's just say there's a vaccine that is approved and even distributed before the election. Would you get it?
Well, I think that's going to be an issue for all of us. I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump.
Getting vaccinated is the single best defense against COVID-19 and its variants. It's the single best defense.
I trust scientists, but I don't trust Donald Trump. And at this moment, the American people can't either. I'm going to continue to do everything I can to encourage the unvaccinated to get vaccinated. That includes addressing hesitancy and misinformation head on.
Unlike Joe and Kamala, I actually believe in the science. I believe in the science of vaccination under Trump, and I believe in them now. And as I said many times, I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what to do. I don't know anything about your medical history. I don't know anything about your current medical condition. But you better take this seriously. People die. I know people that ended up on ventilators, some that barely survived, and some that died. I'm not a medical doctor. I didn't go to medical school. Now, we will do our best to keep you informed and bring on experts with all different points of view, but only you know your unique medical history and current condition, and only you, in consultation with your doctors, should make that informed, important decision about a vaccine. Not any television host, and frankly, not any swamp member in D.C., not any of the wannabe doctors on fake news CNN or MSDNC, certainly not Dr. Joe Biden. I'd like to know what medical school he went to, or anybody in the federal government without a medical license. You have a personal responsibility to protect yourself, your family, and others. And how you do that is your business, not mine. But you do have that responsibility. Not Dr. Joe's either. Individual freedom, liberty is a precious right in this country. Once you lose it, it will be gone forever.